So now that our FDA plates are out of incubation, we're going to examine them for typical colonies. So what's nice about running the controls next to your samples is you can use them to compare to your samples directly when you're looking for these typical results. So the first one we're going to start with is BS agar. So typical salmonella colonies are brown, gray, or black. Sometimes they have a metallic sheen. The surrounding medium is usually brown at first, but may turn black with increased incubation, producing a halo effect. Some strains produce green colonies with little or no darkening of the surrounding medium. So we're looking for brown, gray, black, and potentially a metallic sheen, and maybe green colonies. But if we do have that green colony, it's going to have little to no darkening of the surrounding medium. So starting with our BSA colonies, let's take a look at what typical positives will look like. So you can see here, we have a solid black plate, little tiny pinpoint colonies all around this plate. Looks like maybe the plate was wet, or maybe it dipped back into zone 1 throughout the streaking process, but this plate is completely covered. Let's take a look at our other plate and see if we can see anything else. Okay, so we do have some isolated colonies throughout here. So you can see that they are black colonies with the darkening of the medium. So that's what our H2S positive typical will look like. Now let's take a look at our H2S negative. Here, very light green, tan colonies throughout that plate as well. So now let's take a look at our samples. Starting with sample number 1. So we're looking for brown, black, or gray colonies. Sometimes they can be green and sometimes they can have metallic sheen. So brown, black, or gray colonies. I see some stuff growing throughout here, but it doesn't really look brown, black, or gray. Maybe a light green, but not really. This might be difficult to see. Definitely seeing more of that green tint through here. There is a colony right there that we could potentially carry on. I'm gonna go ahead and circle that for right now. It's gonna be right at the edge of that label. Yep, there we go. I'm looking at sample number 2. Also, we have some brown colonies through here, some darker colonies. This looks much more typical. So we have an isolated colony there, isolated colony there. So I'm just gonna circle a couple different types of colonies that look pretty typical. I really like this really dark one right here and this more brown color right there. So I'm gonna circle both of those. Right here and right here. There we go. Okay, and then same thing for this one, just looking for typical colonies. See some typical colonies as well. Have a nice brown colony right there, a slightly larger one as well. We have this little tiny one, but it's also brown, so we're looking for brown, gray, or black. So it has a darker center than the outside of the colony, whereas this one is more uniform in color. This one also has a darker center, but it's not quite as dark as this center, and we know from looking at our H2S plates that that colony can get very dark in the center. So I'm gonna actually circle this one right here. Yep, right there. And then I'm also going to circle this one. So just circling a couple of the most typical colonies on the plate. We'll carry that on to the next step, but first we're going to look at the rest of our plates. So the next agar we're going to look at is HEA agar. So according to our SOP, we're looking for blue-green to blue colonies with or without black centers. Many cultures of Salmonella may produce colonies with large glossy black centers or may appear as almost completely black. Proteus can resemble Salmonella organisms, so suspect colonies must be biochemically tested. Atypically, a few Salmonella cultures produce yellow colonies with or without black centers. In the absence of typical Salmonella colonies after 24 hours, we're going to pick 2 or more atypical. So what this means is if we have our blue-green blue colonies with or without black centers, or maybe even an almost completely black colony, we're going to choose those. After we re-incubate for an additional 24 hours, we'll look at the plates again, and if we still don't have any of these blue, green, or black colonies, then we'll choose some yellow colonies with or without black centers. So let's take a look at our control for HEA. So here is that control. You can see here lots of black colonies. They do appear almost completely black. It might be a little difficult to see, but they do have a slight dark, almost looks like a halo, so you can tell that the center of the colony is black, but it also produces this black coming across the medium as well. Let's take a look at another one. Yeah, you can see here colonies appear completely black across the auger, and you can see a lot of the colonies got underneath the auger. Now looking at our H2S negative producers, it looks much different. We have blue to blue-green colonies. These are very, very slightly green. They almost look opaque, but that might change after additional 24 hours of incubation. Same thing here. They look very light in color. They are slowly turning green, but at this point they look almost opaque. Okay, so once again, we're looking for blue colonies, blue-green colonies with or without black centers. Our, controls look very dark and very light. So right now, our controls are not really showing that blue-green tinge. Now, this plate, I definitely see some colonies down here growing with that black center. We see some blackening of the media. Let's take a look at our other plate. Oh yeah, there we go. So we see lots of colonies right through here that are producing that black H2S producer. Now yesterday I did remember that I put a smiley face on the plate that I accidentally scratched just so you could see what would happen. So you can see throughout here, the colonies are trying to grow within the scratches, but they're not able to grow because the surface is damaged. So we're going to pick colonies from over here. We don't want the yellow colonies because remember that the black or blue-green are more typical. So we have 2 really great colonies right there. We have another one right there, but these are a little bit more isolated. So we want to take on those. Guy. And this guy. Oh man, there's colonies growing underneath. It's about right here. There we go. It's actually right here. There we go. All right, so circling a couple colonies that do look typical. And then moving on to the next sample. Let's see if we see any typical colonies. So this is definitely orange. I would say that this is yellow, this is orange. So these colonies I could typically or potentially take on the next day if we didn't have any typical samples. However, this is definitely atypical, not anything that we want to carry on to the next step. I'm just going to write atypical on top of it so I don't have to look at it again. Now this is interesting. We do see some kind of yellow kind of peeking through the back here. but we see lots of orange cutting through the sides. So this plate I would probably deem suspect. And we'll see if maybe after another 24 hours of incubation, if these plates end up staying this almost yellow color or if it ends up turning orange. Okay, so let's move on to XLD. For the last auger, the XLD auger, we're looking for colonies that appear black or have black centers with a yellow zone after 18 to 24 hours. If it did continue to incubate, the colonies can become entirely black or pink to red with black center. So we're really looking for black centered colonies with pink to red surrounding that black center. Colonies of H2S negative strains will appear pinkish yellow. And then it does go on to say that most Citrobacter colonies that grow on this medium are yellow without blackening, but some Salmonella cultures do produce yellow colonies with or without black centers. So once again, very similar to HE, if you do not have the ideal typical, then we will move to carrying on potentially some yellow colonies. So if in the absence of typical Salmonella colonies after 24 hours, we are going to go ahead and pick 2 or more atypical colonies to carry on. So we do want to try to get that black centered colony with the pink to red zone. But if we need to, we can also look at yellow colonies if there are none available. So let's take a look at our controls and start there and see what we're supposed to be looking for. So this is the XLD positive. So you can see that these are colonies that have a black center. It does have a pinkish outline. So this is an ideal example of what we're looking for. And then for our H2S negative, you can see here we have more of that pinkish yellow colony. You can definitely see there was some moisture cutting through the center of this plate, causing lots of crazy growth. But you can see here that these colonies definitely appear pinkish yellow throughout here, very opaque, very smooth. So that's what we're really looking for. Let's take a look at the other H2S negative plate. So here you can see a few more where they're a little bit larger, that they have that pink yellow appearance, and that's really what we're looking for that H2S negative. Starting with sample number 1, let's see if we can find any typical colonies. I actually do see a couple right away. Now we see a lot of this mucous membrane type forming. We want to stay away from that. That is not going to be Salmonella. That's not what we're looking for. But we do see some smaller, light pink, opaque colonies right here. So I'm going to go ahead and circle both of those. They do appear to be pink yellow, which is what we're looking for. Okay, and then looking at the second plate, let's see if we can see any. Same thing, this mucus type colony, we want to stay away from that. That is not going to be Salmonella. And then we do have more ideal colonies than unideal, right? Because we want to try and stick with those pink yellow colonies and stay away from these yellow ones if possible. So really, this one right here in the center, and also both of these right here, they all look to be the same morphology, so they all look like they could potentially be the same type of bacterium. So one of those 3 would be what I would take on in this case. So I'm just going to circle those for future use. And then looking at sample number 2, I do see some blackening of a colony on this one, so let's start here. Sample number 2, we actually do have multiple types of morphology on here. We even have some overlapping morphology, but we have a light pink yellow. Actually, it's more pink than pink yellow. So we have a light pink colony. We have what appears to be a very flat yellow colony, almost has a dimple right there. Some colonies producing some black centers, and it's great because we actually have a colony right here on the edge that's producing that black center. So we definitely want to circle that one. I'll circle it from the side and kind of from the bottom. So that black centered colony is definitely what we want to take on. We want to stay away from these more flat dimpled colonies. All right, so now that we've reviewed all of our plates for typical colonies, we're going to select our colonies that we're going to move on to our slants.